CBS News polling shows that Republicans are now estimated to win 228 seats in the House, 4 more than our polling showed just 2 weeks ago, as the GOP continues to be projected to regain control. The polling, done from October 25th through October 28th, would give Republicans a 15-seat gain. Millions have already voted early, and tens of millions are expected to vote before Election Day on November 8th. So to dive a little deeper into this, the polling numbers, let's bring in CBS News Executive Director of Elections and Surveys, Anthony Salvanto. Anthony, okay, so let us talk about the trends that are emerging.
Okay.
When it comes to the recent polling.
Let's have a look at it. So what you were talking about there at the top, this is our latest House estimates, where things stand today. We've got modeled estimates for the entire House because it's a 435-seat contest, right? National House vote will not necessarily tell you this. You want to do it in terms of seats. So Republicans have a lead in what would be 228 seats. That's a slight majority. But from here till Election Day, we're going to be talking, it all comes down to turnout, right? We all overuse that, that's why it's cliche. Let me show you how you take this model and explain to people the possibilities that come off of turnout. If the Democrats were to get higher turnout, among young voters in particular, something approaching what 2018 showed for them. Now, the reason I want to show you this is that it gets Democrats in our modeling back to basically maybe 1 or 2 seat House control, or basically gets them even where we'd be going seat by seat, probably with race results coming in to figure out who might have a narrow majority. That's one scenario. However, more scenarios emerge when you take a look at the fact that Republicans have told us they're more likely to vote and are more motivated. So this is the Republican 238 number. Their turnout edge could manifest itself and get them up to a larger, slightly larger set of gains. Having said all that, and given that this is what seems to be emerging, at least from the current turnout express data, this is still just about an average seat gain for a party out of power, which tells you a larger story for context about how this race is really still very tightly contested, and there just aren't that many toss-up seats.
So the narrative is that there is this large Republican wave. That's the language that's been used, which suggests that it's a sentiment in the country that is shifting towards center-right. But clearly, even in excess of 25 seats, it'd be interesting to go back and look at some historic midterms and see what some of those numbers look like. For example, President Obama's first term, that was a huge
60-odd seats, right? 63 seats. As the nation becomes more partisan and more polarized, you could argue that this is a different era. That these averages that I point out were expressed and come from a different era where there were more swing voters, where there were more perhaps competitive districts, right? So it's what you're comparing that average to. Maybe this turns out to be typical for a hyper-polarized environment.
So crime has emerged as a major issue. We know it's one of the themes that voters are thinking about. How's that bearing out in the numbers?
All right. One of the things I wanted to look at is we know we're seeing a lot of negative ads. We're seeing a lot of positive ads from the parties, or a lot of negative ads. So are they working? Are they having an effect? You talked about crime. This is one thing in particular that stood out. You've got a slight majority of likely voters who think if the Democrats were to win, that they would cut police funding, right? And that's what voters think, that perception. And that tells you that some of those Republican ads are having an impact on voters, right? On the positive side for Democrats, because they want to protect abortion rights, their voters tell us, 84% think that Democrats, if elected, would pass an abortion rights law. Now, on the Republican side, let me just show you that for the differences. On that same topic, you get a majority that think the Republicans would try to pass a national abortion ban if they were to win. But they also get this. 71% think the Republicans would increase U.S. energy production. And with gas prices such a big concern, that is helping, that's public perception. That's public perception. But that's what ultimately matters when people go to cast a vote, right?
That is interesting. So speaking of all those sort of negative ads, how is the message war playing out this cycle? 'Cause I know I've noticed so many negative ads in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that has been interesting to me is this sort of closing arguments between the Democrats saying democracy is under threat and Republicans sort of emphasizing the economy. So on that point about Democrats maybe and what they think would happen, there's this 56% who think Republicans, if they win, would have efforts to try to overturn Democratic wins in elections. So a lot of skepticism, at least certainly for people who are voting Democrats, that are underpinning a lot of that. You know, having said that, you also see, like I said, what people perceive Democrats might do if they win, you know, things like open the U.S.-Mexico border, right? And these aren't necessarily things that would happen, but it's the public perception of the way this is because they've been hitting the Democrats on that. So yes, to some extent it has an effect, sometimes for a party's own partisans,
Right.
who are just receiving the message like, hey, it's okay to come back home if you were thinking about crossing over.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Anthony Salvanto, always great to have you, my friend.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.